Hare Krishna, obeisances to the devotees. Thank you, Radhesha Prabhu, for agreeing to host this evening. That would be very nice for you and for everyone. And I was going to see whether Sucharudeva Prabhu is available to lead us in the opening kirtan.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Krishna Krishna Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitunamini Namaste Saraswate Dev Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Jai Ho Vishnu Padam Sakarikari Stotar Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Paramhamsa Parivrajacharya Stotar Shri Srimad Divine Wisdom Bhakta Siddham Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Nam Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Srivasadi Sri Gaurav Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Sri Radha Krishna Gopta Vinath Shyama Kunda Radha Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Thanapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Jatnavai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveda Gaurav Bhaktavinda Ki Jai all glories to the Assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the Assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the Assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hare Guru Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai
Do you have any words or anything for us, Kendra Prabhu, before we begin?
Hare Krishna.
Jai. All right. I think we left off with verse 20. If anybody wants to if anybody has input on that, I think we completed 19 last time.
I looked at my notes and I don't have notes for 19.
Oh, you don't? Maybe I just read it myself.
18 is the last verse that I have notes for in the chat, but that's
Well,
not definitive.
I'd say there's no harm in reading 19 again, even if we read it. But yeah, I may have just read it myself. All right. Welcome, everyone. My obeisances to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. What is Kendra Prabhu? Do you know where, or Madhupati Prabhu, my obeisances, do you know where Guru Maharaj is right now? I saw him in Mauritius last.
Last we spoke with him, he was in Radhadesh.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
His schedule says Radhadesh.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madhupati Prabhu. Thank you, Kendra Prabhu.
And Tulsi Priya says she read 19 already, so we may indeed be starting on 20 today.
All right. Sounds good.
Not 100% sure, but I seem to recall that.
Yeah, I think I remember.
You read 17 and 18, and then I read 19.
All right.
I think.
Starting with 20 today. Well, I'll read the first verse and then we'll go into discussion. We'll pass the reading around. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Starting with 20. Yatana deha avritya pashar badbhagat kalebalat. Nayato dirgamadvanam dandyam rajabhartayata. As a criminal is arrested for punishment by the constables of the state, a person engaged in criminal sense gratification is similarly arrested by the Yamadutas, who bind him by the neck with strong rope and cover his subtle body so that he may undergo severe punishment. Every living entity is covered by a subtle and gross body. The subtle body is the covering of mind, ego, intelligence, and consciousness. It is said in the scriptures that the constables of Yamaraj cover the subtle body of the culprit and take him to the abode of Yamaraj to be punished in a way that he is able to tolerate. He does not die from this punishment, because if he died, then who would suffer the punishment? It is not the business of the constables of Yamaraj to put one to death. In fact, it is not possible to kill a living entity because factually he is eternal. He simply has to suffer the consequences of his activities of sense gratification. The process of punishment is explained in the Caitanya-caritamrta. Formerly, the king's men would take a criminal in a boat in the middle of a river. They would dunk him by grasping a bunch of his hair and thrusting him completely underwater. And when he was almost suffocated, the king's constables would take him out of the water and allow him to breathe for some time. And then they would again dunk him in the water to suffocate. This sort of punishment is inflicted upon the forgotten soul by Yamaraj, as will be described in the following verses. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami Niti Namine. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Saji. Oh, that was the Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayadvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right. I was reading Ananta Sheshpuru's comment, and my mind ran away from the invocation prayers. It just shows how unconscious sometimes we are in our activities. Actually, these prayers are meant to pay obeisances to the previous acharyas, to pray for the ability to speak something in the line of disciplic succession. So it actually behooves me to speak with full attention, but the Western mentality with a desire to multitask, I saw a pop-up of comment and my eyes ran there. Let's see. Ananta Sheshpuru says, waterboarding has a Vedic origin, it seems. Yeah, and Srila Prabhupada has given this example. I saw one time, or heard one time, he was giving the example of material enjoyment as the breath taken between being held underwater. This relief from suffering is experienced by us as the highest pleasure. We're so uncomfortable in material life that if we can take something, either by eating or by resting or whatever it is, we get some relief from our day-to-day pangs of materialistic life, then that feels like some great pleasure. You win the lottery, and now the pain of being financially worried is relieved, so some pleasure is there. On the positive side of the spectrum, it's very insignificant, just like that breath you take. It should be the status quo. Everyone has a right to breathe, and yet we're all drowning, fish out of water. We're all suffocating or drowning, depending on which side of the analogy you want to take. But Tulsi Priya Mata also mentions that we have not read 19. So perhaps let's go back. Why not? Quickly go over 19 as well. Sorry, it's in the reverse order. Yamadutao tada praptao himao sarabhasekshano sadrishva drashta hridaya sakrin mutram vimunchati. At death, he sees the messengers of the Lord of Death come before him, their eyes full of wrath, and in great fear he passes stool and urine. There are two kinds of transmigration of a living entity after passing away from the present body. One kind of transmigration is to go to the controller of sinful activities, who is known as Yamaraj, and the other is to go to the higher planets, up to Vaikuntha. Here, Lord Kapila describes how persons engaged in activities of sense gratification to maintain a family are treated by the messengers of Yamaraj, called Yamadutas. At the time of death, the Yamadutas become the custodians of these persons who have strongly gratified their senses. They take care of the dying man and take him to the planet where Yamaraj resides. Oh, they don't not take care, they take charge of the dying man. In English, we have an idiom, to take care of something, to deal with it. So idiomatically, they take care of the dying man, but that's not what's written. They take charge of the dying man and take him to the planet where Yamaraj resides. The conditions there are described in the following verses, beginning with what I just read. The nature of their binding him with by the neck with strong rope and covering his subtle body to undergo severe punishment. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada has mentioned that the quality of the true nature of the living entity is spirit, and therefore factually he's internal. He's just externally suffering these impositions of the Yamadutas. They are constables of Yamaraj. So Srila Prabhupada has given the analogy of the state, that just like we have representatives of the state that take care of dealing out punishment, so similarly in universal, in not universal affairs sounds more macroscopic, but in the administrative affairs of the universe or of our world, the sinful living entities are subject to face Yamaraj, and they're brought there by the constables. And it's such a fearful sight that they're passing stool and urine just to see these fearsome representatives of Yamaraj. I'm charging my Kindle right now, so I don't have Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary open to me, but I don't have much to say on the topic. I open it up to the floor if others would like to give more input on these verses. Looks like Saraswati Devi in the comments says, Pranams, one could argue that consequences, punishment from sinful acts, would be beneficial if a conditioned soul can actually remember the consequences experienced, so as to learn from the pain endured. What is the point if one cannot remember the crime nor the punishment, as leaves no chance to learn from the mistake? I've heard my Guru Maharaj give a couple different answers to this exact question. One time he said that learning isn't necessarily a requisite. Learning isn't necessarily the most important factor. Sometimes it's just a punishment. Sometimes you do something wrong. You may learn from it or not learn from it. If you're intelligent, then you'll learn from it. If you're intelligent, then you'll recognize. Or if you have some sukriti, then you'll recognize. But at least the affairs of the universe are being held in order. Sometimes we have these questions, why do bad things happen to good people? And we can see from these verses that actually there are very stringent laws governing all of our activities. So when we do have the sukriti to understand these affairs of the universe, then we can guide our lives accordingly. Then we can recognize that, oh, my past suffering had a reason. And we're very helpless in getting out of it. Even if you do understand that you're suffering for some higher purpose, still your way out seems unclear. We're just reading a verse in this morning's Bhagavatam class here in Hawaii that quoted Anadi Karma Pale, the bhajan by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he says, Nade ki upai. I don't see a way out of this. I'm completely dependent upon your mercy. So sometimes even with knowledge of our actions and reactions, we're suffering greatly without a full understanding of how to free ourselves. We're so bound by material energy. So then we cry out to Krishna, please help me. So that's actually the extent of our free will for devotees and non-devotees alike. When you recognize that the whole material program is a learning tool for you to recognize that, hey, I'm not the supreme. I'm being subject to so many forms of suffering. And it takes some intelligence. It takes some sukriti to recognize that. Not everyone may recognize that. Sometimes we see this when we're training animals. One animal is very receptive and can be guided very easily. Another one is very stubborn and refuses to learn. The analogy came to mind because I saw something about dog training recently. But we're the same way. We're no different. Some people are going to take to it more quickly. But in any case, the management of the reactions is being carried out without any flaw, perfectly. The universe is perfectly structured. Saraswati Devi says, but learning and remembering the corresponding results from your mistakes can lead to not repeating the same mistake. So it is beneficial in that sense. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If anybody else has input on that particular question, I'd love to hear your responses. I just remembered the one comment, one angle that my spiritual master mentioned, that sometimes we don't learn. Sometimes it's just purely a punishment. And when you do have the sukriti to understand, then you don't make the mistake again by being guided by your spiritual master, by shastra, by sadhu. Otherwise, we can apparently learn from a mistake. Yeah, we can only apparently learn. Someone, the thief, he goes to jail and he learns how to thieve better. He learned from that mistake, but then he tries to thieve in a different way. So remembering your mistakes and remembering this and remembering that, sometimes it's said if you could remember your past lives, you'd be suffering so greatly, it would be intolerable. It's a blessing to forget. So the real thing we need to remember is not each instance of wrongdoing, but how to guide our lives in such a way that each second is engaged in Krishna consciousness. That was my understanding of the reply I heard. And Ananta Shesh says, not everyone learns, though. We are examples too. Yeah, how many times do we need to learn the same lesson? And then, let's see. Ananta Sheshpur says, despite engaging in sense gratification, wouldn't chanting Krishna's names just once absolve a person from being taken to Yamaraj? That's what we hear. Yeah, Trayate Mahato Bhayat. A little bit of advancement saves one from the greatest fear which sometimes is described as taking birth in a lower species or facing the Yamadutas. And then Akendra Prabhu says, thank you, Anantashesh Prabhu. Yeah, there's so many verses to that effect. I'm sure we could pull up. I just read one recently in the 11th canto. What chapter? Anyway, it said something along the lines of the devotee just calling out one time to the Lord with love is binds the Lord to him. The Lord cannot abandon him if he's chanted one time with love. Kendra Prue says, a technical note for everyone. Please indicate raised hand by typing comment in the chat window. Our host is using the phone app, which doesn't show hand emoji. Yes, thank you, Kendra Prue. I don't see hands up. It's true. And Tulsi Priyamata says, for the criminal mind, the only mistake they feel they need to learn from is the mistake of getting caught. Yeah. So learning has different levels. You know, someone can appear very intelligent. What was that? There's some, I think Christopher Hitchens was his name. I saw something where they were saying, what gives your life meaning? If you don't have God, what gives your life meaning? And he responded facetiously, but it carried a great lesson. He said, what gives me meaning is to see the suffering of others. Para dukkha sukhi, a demonic mentality. He has this conception. And then he said, and with its diminishing returns, sex life. So even although recognizing the law of diminishing returns, that you're enjoying more, at some point it peaks, and then you enjoy less and less by the same activity, the law of diminishing returns. In spite of that, still, he says, well, it's the best I've got. So in spite of having such high intelligence, it's misapplied. Yes, Akendra Prabhu, please.
Thank you so much, Radhesha Prabhu. Just an anecdote. I was reading along in these verses, and I always marvel at the personae of the Yamadutas. Like it says here, their eyes are full of wrath when they're coming to bind the conditioned soul and take him away. And I think they're angry. They're not just fulfilling an official duty. They're genuinely angry. So there's something going on there, some backstory that we're not privy to, and maybe we don't want to be privy to. I remember one time in a Bhagavatam class, during a discussion of a verse like this one, I asked Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, the Yamadutas have always puzzled me. They're so angry, they take away the sinful, they punish them. What sort of karma would one have to have in order to receive the body of a Yamaduta? And he just sort of looked at me and said, you know, our real business is to learn how to become pure devotees of Krishna, not how to become Yamadutas.
Wow, thank you, Prabhu. This is actually, that actually is a good point for me, because we're in the, we just finished this 5th canto actually in our online class here in Hawaii. It's mostly Hawaii members, but anyone is welcome to join. But it is mostly Hawaii congregation, senior devotees, and the discussion has been raging. Who are the Yamadutas? What has given them that form? And are they saintly, or do they have any saintly qualities? And the discussion has gone back and forth. And I'm of the impression that as representatives of the state, so to speak, they have saintly qualities. They have the association of one of our Mahajans. And the opportunity is there for them to learn the glories of the holy name. Even if this is an isolated incident, that of Ajamil, at least in this incident, Yamraj directly instructs them the glories of the holy name. So how fortunate is their position that they're that close. But it's been a hot topic of discussion, because everyone else points out these verses. Like today we're seeing, they come with wrath in their eyes. They seem to enjoy their activities, which they must, otherwise they wouldn't have a body suitable to deliver this sort of punishment. But then, are they accruing karma, or as representatives of Yamaraj on his instruction, are they performing their duty and therefore free from the karmic reactions of the suffering they cause? And to what degree, is if they give, that was one too many whips, you overdid the whip quota, now it's just gratuitous, at some point. So then the discussion extends from there. But your reply given by His Grace Ravindra Swarup Prabhu was very nice. let's not involve ourselves overly in the karmic doings and reactions of the Yamadutas, and figure out how we can be greater Vaishnavas. Let's be like Vishnu Dutas. Let's not linger on the wrath and pain caused by Yamadutas. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. We have a couple more comments here. Oh, yes, I'll post the link for the class in Hawaii, yes. And Tulsi Priya says, Christopher Hitchens is one of my favorite atheists for the quality of mind you describe, but I feel sorry for him that he wasn't intelligent enough to even be open to the idea of God. Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate for all of his brain power. It's misused. And then Saraswati Devi says, in the Rudra Sampradaya, worship of Mother Jamuna is prominent. And she had asked her brother Yamaraj on the Raksha Bandhan Day, Sister's Day, that anyone who had even once worshipped her is her child, no matter how fallen that soul is, and so can never be touched by Yamaraj. And her brother promised her this gift. Oh, very sweet. And a comment from Praveen Krishna Prabhu that I missed earlier. Forgive me. Can you read it, Kendra Prabhu? I don't see it somehow.
I'm seeing the later one. Yeah, I'll read the one that I can see.
Oh, right there. Okay, yes, please.
No one would want to live in this world again if they remembered those hellish experiences. They do not want to remember. They want to enjoy separate from Krishna. They want to enjoy sinning, he says.
Yeah. The Sanskrit word for enjoyment, whether it's ashnute or bhoga, bhogar, it's very interesting how it's often translated as to enjoy or suffer. This concept of enjoying, sometimes we only think we're enjoying. It's a sort of mental gymnastic to twist ourselves into a false state of comfort when actually we're suffering like anything. But we try to tell ourselves, oh no, this time it'll be pleasurable. This time it'll be nice. I see your hand up, Tulsi Priya. Yes, please.
Oh, I was, as you mentioned earlier, I was slightly multitasking earlier in the class, and I was just wondering if Saraswati Mataji's comment had been read already. That was earlier.
I believe it had. And then there's, depending on which comment it is, I think I read all of hers. I read about Jamuna and the Raksha Bandhan ceremony. And
no, this was earlier about consequences and punishment. If you can remember. Yeah, you did read that. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to keep quiet because I'm not all there today. No
worries. And then we're getting a comment here about the nature of Yamaraj's assistance, that they came from Pitriloka and they weren't offered proper pinda, and so they're angry and they've developed a revengeful mood. Do you have pramana for that? I see the comment. It sounds like something I may have heard in the past, but it definitely will be something I bring up in our morning classes.
Hare Krishna. Well, I heard it from my Guru Maharaj. I can't find the praman for that, but the logic, like it's how their mood got developed, because Pitriloka is the planet of our fathers. They are supposed to be worshipped, right? There's Vedic ceremonies for that, and if they are not performed, like there's something related to the time that jivas remain at Pitriloka, something like that. I can find praman. I think it's from Rajendra Kumar Prabhu. I can find.
Yes. If you can find pramana, I'd be very grateful. That's very interesting. Thank you. And I just posted the link if the time is suitable for people in other time zones or anywhere. That's our online Bhagavatam class, heavily populated by Srila Prabhupada's disciples, and a couple others join now and again. But this morning we had His Holiness Hanumat Preshika Maharaj. So it's a nice Sangha. But thank you for that. Let's go ahead and move on to text 21. If we either have a volunteer reader or we can start calling names.
Yes. I had another comment, based on what Saraswati was saying about Mother Yamuna, and what you were saying about just calling the name of the Lord just once, that you are, protected. was thinking it actually is very easy to avoid the Yamadutas, based on these statements, and so one just needs to be a little pious just to avoid, some catastrophic punishment. But there are so many people who are very stubborn. So it's that stubbornness and that refusal, speaking of Christopher Hitchens, is what gets you in trouble, because I think Krishna knows better than anyone how hard it is, once we're in this material world, to be perfect and pure and all of that. And he gives us all these little concessions, whether through Yamuna Devi or through the holy name or whatever, that you can at least keep yourself stable, until you get purified enough. And if we don't do that, then it's not cruel. It's not cruel punishment. It's like when somebody's really stubborn, you need to get the stool kicked out of you, so to speak, to soften you up. So it's just, I mean, we just have so many things that we can take advantage of to make progress, even if we're not becoming perfect. Bible.
Wow, that takes tough love to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just looked at Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, and a very brief one from text 20, that the Yamadutas pull the living entity out of his gross body and put him into a body suitable for punishment. Wow, that's I know last time we were discussing how one has the body of an animal, that transferal, how one becomes acclimated. And so this is an interesting discussion. He's given a body suitable for punishment, that it won't, as Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, the living soul, the living entity himself can't die. But the body also has to be of similar durable stuff, that it can handle some pretty severe, if we're going to call it love, some pretty heavy love, as horrible as it is. Would somebody, we have one comment, two comments before we go on. Praveen Krishna Prabhu says, Jifa Navakti Bhagavad Guna Namadeyam Chetasna Smarati Tach Charanarvindam Krishnaya no Namati Yach Chira Ekadapi Tan Ana Yadvam Asato Krita Vishnu Krityan. My dear servants, please bring to me only those sinful persons who do not use their tongues to chant the holy name and qualities of Krishna, whose hearts do not remember the lotus feet of Krishna even once, and whose heads do not bow down even once before Lord Krishna. Send me those who do not perform their duties toward Vishnu, which are the only duties in human life. Please bring me all such fools and rascals. Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. So many concessions. So many opportunities are given. One just has to have the inclination. And from Saraswati Devi, when I was a child, I said that I wouldn't mind seeing Yamaraj, as I have so many questions to ask him about our mother, his sister, Jamuna Ma, and how to please her, and get whacked on the head for this comment. Nice. Yeah, I know, as us as Guru Kulis, we always told each other, if you eat standing up, that, oh, you have Yamaraj on your shoulders. And I remember we had one friend, and he was walking around eating some maha. We said, oh, you have Yamaraj on your shoulders. And he looked up and he said, Jai, Haribol. I thought that was a great response. Yeah. From a we have a couple more comments, and then we'll go back to you, if that's all right. Kendra Prabhu is posting the next verse. Murari Gupta Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, Ajamil must have chanted Narayan many times before his death, but the Yamadutas still came for him. How is that? Well, if you read the pastime, they make several mistakes in that regard. But we're not going to jump there, because we're going to get there in a couple cantos. But yes, the Yamadutas wrongfully took Ajamil. That's a great part of that. A great part of that pastime. All right. Yes, Tulsi Priya Devi.
I just wanted to say, there's a BBT painting of Krishna and Balaram going to Yamaraj to ask for the son of their teacher, and that painting is, I forget the artist, Ramdas, I'm not sure, but Yamaraj is painted so beautifully. He's so gorgeous. that inspired a desire in me to see him in person. I thought if he looks even half this nice, he must be a gorgeous personality. And I don't really want to see him, but he looks really good in this picture.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, by our paintings, we get, I think Srila Prabhupada called them windows into the spiritual world. So you get windows into the into the lives of various demigods. You get windows into these, and we get to see it, through that art. We get to witness the greatness. And then we have as Hades Yamaraj. Then he would be the counterpart, certainly in Greek mythology. But we also get a lot of places where they fall shy. So we could make a comparative study and see all the ways in which they're similar, but it's certainly not a full counterpart. But yeah, we definitely have corresponding. I read a whole thing from Sadaputta Prabhu in which he was describing how the Loka mountain range is surrounding the with huge Mount Meru in the middle. And he was saying all these traditions have a large mountain, but they've placed it in the center of their continent. So, we have Greek mythology with Mount Olympus with a changed location, but that concept of a very large mountain with demigods higher up, all of these things are presented in their philosophy. And so Sadaputta Prabhu drew many comparisons and correlations. And so certainly I think it would be correct to say that would be their counterpart of Yamaraj, but with some differences. Hades certainly doesn't present the Mahajan vibe, instructing everyone to chant the holy names. Shall we continue with text 21? Kendra Prabhu has posted it in the chat. Who would like to read? Any volunteers? This is the toughest part of this class, getting someone to step forward voluntarily. We always need to call on people.
I don't mind reading.
Oh, do you see the verse 3:30:21?
Yeah, I have it. So
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Tayor nirbina hridaya sarjanair jatta vipatuhu patisvabhir bhakshyamana artokam svamanusmaran. Translation. While carried by the constables of Yamaraj, he is overwhelmed and trembles in their hands. While passing on the road, he is bitten by dogs, and he can remember the sinful activities of his life. He is thus terribly distressed. Purport. It appears from this verse that while passing from this planet to the planet of Yamaraj, the culprit, arrested by Yamaraj's constables, meets many dogs which bark and bite just to remind him of his criminal activities of sense gratification. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that one becomes almost blind and is bereft of all sense when he is infuriated by the desire for sense gratification. He forgets everything. Kamais tais tair rita gyanaha. One is bereft of all intelligence when he is too attracted by sense gratification, and he forgets that he has to suffer the consequences also. Here, the chance for recounting his activities of sense gratification is given by the dogs engaged by Yamaraj. While we live in the gross body, such activities of sense gratification are encouraged even by modern government regulations. In every state all over the world, such activities are encouraged by the government in the form of birth control. Women are supplied pills, and they are allowed to go to a clinical laboratory to get assistance for abortions. This is going on as a result of sense gratification. Actually, sex life is meant for begetting a good child, but because people have no control over the senses, and there is no institution to train them to control the senses, the poor fellows fall victim to the criminal offenses of sense gratification, and they are punished after death, as described in these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakya Chakshurmilitandena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. So if I can say something is that, lust in all its forms, yeah, we know that sex is like the highest form of lust, but also, I mean, the grossest form of lust, but like any kind of lusty desires for sense gratification without Krishna is considered like lust, this material world. And when one, like Prabhupada explained here, when one is too much desire to indulge in sense gratification, he loses his intelligence to discriminate what's good, what's wrong. And we can see that even like we were talking about, like learning from our mistakes, even like the way a lot of people live. We see all the pollution, the problems due to pollution because of the way that we consume. We try to lord it over the nature, to live always like higher standards of life. So yeah, it's so many, it indulges so many problems that we can already see. We don't need to wait for Yamaraj, for the Yamadutas to come and get us to understand. But like we were mentioning before, not everyone learns from their mistakes because we are bereft of our intelligence when we indulge too much in sense gratification. So this is the reason why. And yeah, the example given by Prabhupada, which the most like obvious example is the control of birth. Like the girls take pills, and but then you have the disease, sexual disease transmitted, that like it's a big problem too. There's so many problems that come from all these birth controls. Also, abortions create a lot of trauma to the woman that gets it, because it's not natural. And yeah, so many problems arises from any so-called temporary solutions for more sense gratification. We just get more entangled in this material misery. So this is what I have to say.
Thank you, Tulsi Toshani Devi. We have a comment from Ananta Sheshpuru that 99.99% of everything that we come across in our lives is geared for sense gratification. Yeah, that's the point being made in the purport, that the government organizations and all organizations. Yes, it looks like Saraswati Devi is making this comment. Does the state governments that encourage and facilitate simple acts share 20% of the resulting karma, including all citizens? I've heard that there is some reciprocation. We sort of get both ways, that the king's sinful activities can reflect on the population, and certainly as the representative of God in the institution, the king. Naranam cha naradhipam. Among men, I'm the king. So this person, a lot of responsibility is put there. That certainly he's getting some of the sinful reactions. So now 20%, I don't know the specific numbers if someone has pramana for that. But I was going to take it a different way, that because the governments are promoting all of these things, there has to be an organization that's promoting the truth, that's recalling living entities. And that's where our role comes in. And it behooves us as those who have an understanding of the truth to be the organization that's enlightening others, giving others that opportunity to remember. Because sometimes you can go on for time immemorial, suffering the results of your karma and committing more sinful activities. But I did notice also, Saraswati Devi, that this purport had some mention of reminding the living entity, this continued reminder. Now, how much they take from that, we don't know, but they're getting nipped by the rurus as a reminder. I won't talk too much, forgive me. Let's see. So I don't know the exact percentage, Saraswati Devi, if anyone else has some comment. Ananta Sheshpur says, now teenagers are vaccinated to get immunized from effects of sexual activities. Wow, I know nothing of any of this. It's always a reactive behavior from the state. And Tulsi Priya Devi has a comment. Yes.
Hi, Krishna. Well, I was thinking it's not just that the the government facilitates it, but they promote it because that's how you keep people in line. And if people are enlightened and they're free of desires, or at least relatively free of the desire for sense gratification, or their desires for sense gratification are in the mode of goodness, you can't control them. You know, it's you keep people dull and suffering and stupid, and then you promise them that, you know, if you vote for me, I'll do this for you and do that for you. But if people are in control of their senses and they're intelligent and they can not only think of their own desires, but they can think of the general welfare. And so they will, you know, grant power. You know, we're living in democracy, so that's how it works. The longer I live, the more I like the idea of what's the word? A benign autocracy or benign dictatorship, because I hear things about countries where they're much more repressive with regards to sinful activities, but you can leave your house unlocked, you can leave your car unlocked, you know, you don't, you know, so it's you're trading off, you know, you're trading off freedom, so-called freedom to do nonsense for security, you know. So it's something, you know, people, we can't change it right away, but I think we need to talk about it. You know, we need to talk about what it means to be a sane, sober, and intelligent person, and how you get that way. My husband's Guru Maharaj Ravindra Prabhu, he said many times that the four regulative principles are principles of cognition. It's not just moral principles, they're principles of cognition. So when you follow them, your intelligence increases, and you know what's good for you, not only spiritually, but materially also. Haribol.
I'm seeing in the chat that Guru Maharaj is with us. Please accept my humble obeisances. Guru Maharaj, welcome to our to your Sangha. So we've gone over 3 verses. We just went over text 21, and now we're discussing the government's involvement in our better education or our worse education. And I think Tulsi Priya Devi's comment was nice in terms of supply and demand, that because you have people in leadership who are looking at the to supply the demands according to their intelligence, what will bring them comfort, what will bring us comfort, which is obviously we don't have very Brahminical personalities guiding these decisions. So it's all on the grounds of sense gratification. So we have a couple of comments. Nanta Sheshpur mentions the HPV vaccine is being strongly recommended by medical professionals. And Praveen Krishnapur says, what if the boy doesn't want the child to be aborted, but the girl does it? Does he also become party to the sin? And also, if vice versa, the girl is forced, even if she doesn't want to, is she party to sin then? Of course, these are the exceptions, but we can definitely discuss the exceptions. I would get the impression that therefore one should take great care in how one goes about procreation. Know your partner. Speaking of which, my wife and I, our child is due today. So I ask all of your blessings that this child may participate in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. But yeah, one should have this conception, this idea that the person that I'm going to have a child with won't kill the child in the womb. It would be nice to have that established beforehand. Any other comments or questions, or perhaps we can go on to 22 before our time is up. Praveen Krishnapur says, principles of cognition. Can you please explain that again? Was that you, Tulsi Priya Devi, who was talking
It
about
was, and if my husband wishes to, he could probably explain it even better than I, since it's his Guru Maharaj and he's heard it at least as many times as I have.
It's a point that Ravindra Prabhu speaks on often, that the 4 regulative principles as they've been given to us are sometimes seen as moral principles or things that you do to be pious or good, but really they're practically principles that if you follow them, you will be able to understand spiritual or even material knowledge. They're principles of cognition. You can follow that logic out if you look at those who are habitually breaking those principles. These are things that are not taught in public educational institutions, but they used to be understood as necessary ingredients for being able to have any kind of knowledge whatsoever, abstinence from all the things we abstain from. They just foster a clear mindset. It corresponds to the mode of goodness, really. In sattva guna, one can actually experience knowledge and some kind of enlightenment, whereas if one is a slave to one's passions, cognition or knowledge just won't take place, or it'll be very difficult and slow. Yes, thank you.
Tulsi Priya Devi says, he also puts it another way. Sense gratification makes you stupid. Good point. Let's perhaps just read the next couple and maybe we can hear a little something from Maharaj before we close today. This is text 22. Kshutrit paritorka davanala nalan nilaihi santapyamana patitapta valuke. Wow, that first line really tripped me up. Davanala nilaihi krichrena prishte kashaya chataditas chalatyasaktopi nirasha modake. Under the scorching sun, the criminal has to pass through roads of hot sand with forest fires on both sides. He is whipped on the back by the constables because of his inability to walk, and he is afflicted by hunger and thirst. But unfortunately, there is no drinking water, no shelter, and no place for rest on the road. I'm going to just read the English, if that's all right. While passing on that road to the abode of Yamaraj, he falls down in fatigue, and sometimes he becomes unconscious, but he is forced to rise again. In this way, he is very quickly brought to the presence of Yamaraj. Thus, he has to pass 99,000 yojanas within 2 or 3 moments, and then he is at once engaged in the torturous punishment which he is destined to suffer. 1 yojana is calculated to be 8 miles, and he has to pass along a road which is therefore as much as 792,000 miles. Such a long distance is passed over within a few moments only. The subtle body is covered by the constables so that the living entity can pass such a long distance quickly and at the same time tolerate the suffering. This covering, although material, is of such fine elements that material scientists cannot discover what the coverings are made of. To pass 792,000 miles within a few moments seems wonderful to the modern space travelers. They have so far traveled at a speed of 18,000 miles per hour. But here we see that a criminal passes 792,000 miles within a few seconds only, although the process is not spiritual, but material. Guru Maharaj.
The one thing is we shouldn't skip the Sanskrit, but let's see.
Sorry about that. I was thinking in the interest of time, since we only have a couple minutes here, but yes, next time I'll chant it. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm. The Srila Prabhupada presents these things as being not merely symbolic or not merely symbolic or allegorical, but being factual. And Lord Kapila will give the argument, if he hasn't already, that we see these things even in this world. Sometimes someone's lost in the desert and has to suffer this way. There's no place to go. There's heat above, there's heat below. They suffer until they finally die of dehydration, and their desiccated body is left on the road. So these things sometimes happen even here, and they're described as happening to the person who's supposedly enjoying fruitive activities, adverse or grievous sinful activities in this life. Prabhupada makes that point that the people are so foolish that they only consider this life and don't consider what will be the consequences. And we see that in this life too. Even people do things that are foolish and later have to suffer the consequences that they knew would be there, but they somehow ignored, or they'd heard would be there, but they somehow ignored. The I don't have an more immediately.
We had a discussion earlier, Guru Maharaj, before you joined, I believe, in which we're trying to figure out if a living entity can't remember his suffering. This was a question by Saraswati Devi. Then what is the point of being put through tortures that you can't remember and learn from? And I cited an answer I'd remembered you saying, but since you're with us, maybe you can elucidate your thoughts on that, our ability to become reformed.
Well, one thing is, even if I don't remember it, I'm hearing that it's there. That this suffering will go on, and I'll have to go through it. That I don't remember it later. Sometimes that happens. People suffer so badly that they can't even. What is that? They repress it. They can't remember it, but it was there. Or later, under any circumstances, we can't really remember how terrible it was, but it was. Also, it's not merely educational. It's also, well, this is what you get. You may remember or not remember, but this is the seed you've sown, so this is what you're going to reap. And whether it has educational value or not is in one sense beside the point. Also, the point is made, Srila Prabhupada makes a point in a purport, that this is education for your next life. Someone is forced to eat stool, or someone is forced to suffer in some miserable way, and in the next life he gets a body that he's prepared for. He gets a hog's body, so he's prepared for the hog's body by this punishment administered by Yamaraj and his constables, as it were. And that's there also.
Thank you. We have a comment from Tulsi Priya Devi. This description sounds like a literal nightmare in which time and distance are dilated and contracted, and hints at the idea that material world is also a bad dream.
Yeah, good.
And then from Praveen Krishna Prabhu, scientists travel 18,000 miles per hour and the criminal 792,000 miles for a few seconds. Seems Srila Prabhupada is teasing the scientists.
Perhaps. Generally, he would mock them more than tease them. Or here it may be that he's just arguing for just making clear to us what the difference is between material experience, usual material experience, and the experience here on the road to Yamaraj.
Yeah, we had in verse 20, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary mentions this act of their covering the body, giving them a suitable body to make this journey and to suffer appropriately without that body being killed. It's and then a few more little comments. Ananta Sheshpuru says, "Education for next life" is a catchy phrase. Yeah, we'll have to throw that on a T-shirt or something. Saraswati Devi says, these punishments would make anyone beg for death. And Toshini Devi Dasi says, it's nice to know that these moments last only for a few seconds. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, and when you're not, it seems to drag on forever. Well, we've reached our time, so thank you all so much for being here today, and thank you, Maharaj, for jumping on here at the end and giving us some nice devotional points. And we'll have a closing kirtan if we have a volunteer. Who can we coax from their muted state to pour forth your voice and glorification, now that we've heard the glories of the holy name and how chanting even once will ensure that you don't face the Yamadutas. We should all be clamoring for the opportunity to chant the holy names and to hear them. So who will clamor forth?
I can if you want.
For 4 or 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Satarosha Shriman, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Satarosha Shriman, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Haribo. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada, all glories to Sri Advaita, Jayadvaita Maharaj Ki Jai.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Maharaj, for coming on. Thank you, Ekendra Prabhu, for letting me guide us through this reading. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, or whoever can attend. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Radhesha. Thank you to all. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Samveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hare Hare.
Oh.